Hi, it's Kerry Lusignan, relationship expert at the Northampton Center for Couples Therapy, and I am here today to talk with you about the attachment styles of being avoidant and the attachment style of being anxious, and how those two things can come together and cause some potential bumps for us in our relationship. And to make it simple and a little bit fun, since Halloween is on its way, I'm going to talk about it from the lens of two well-known characters, Halloween characters, that being Jack Skellington and Sally, because Jack Skellington is a really great example of an avoidant attachment style, and Sally is actually a really great example of an anxious attachment style. So, what are these attachment styles? A person who has an avoidant attachment style, sometimes Stan Tatkin will refer to these people as islands. If you have an avoidant attachment style, chances are when you are stressed out, particularly in relationship, but maybe even in general, your preference is going to be to want to do something that we call auto-regulate, self-regulate. And when you auto-regulate, it means that you're going to go inward and you're going to sort of turn to yourself to try to calm yourself, to try to soothe yourself. And so people who are islands or have an avoidant attachment style are kind of similar to Jack. For those of you that have watched The Nightmare Before Christmas, he's a character who kind of holes up in a tower, gets really obsessed with some stuff going on in his head, and really ends up kind of distancing himself from everybody else, immersing himself in that, and also sort of having a nervous breakdown in the process, but that's, I guess, another video. And, that also speaks to another thing that's really common that, we see in people who have an avoidant attachment style is, it's not always, but if you have this style, you may be prone to turning to work or maybe even devices or other things, even more than the average person, as a way to sort of self-soothe. You also may be prone to staying up late at night because if you think about it, being up late at night affords extra time to be alone and away from people, which avoidant folks tend to like. Now, whether or not that's good for you is another question. Is actually if you want to be in a relationship, and as a couples therapist, I operate from the belief that most of us, if not all of us, do want to be in a relationship. We just can't get out of our own way, and we have, our own injuries from childhood. Being an island, being avoidant, is probably one of the most anti-relationship styles out there. And if you have this style, it's something you want to be aware of, because chances are it's affecting others around you, particularly if they have a different style. So what's a different style that we see often that can kind of bump into you if you're avoidant? Well, the most well-known one is to have an anxious attachment style, which for those of you that watch Nightmare Before Christmas, Sally has. Now, Sally is this lovely character who is actually quite entranced with Jack Skellington, and she's watching him kind of get lost in his thoughts and get lost in his work, and she's increasingly concerned out of fondness for him, as well as fondness for the world and the potential damage he could cause. And she's really preoccupied with him, and she's turning towards him, and she's making bids to connect with him and to try to engage with him. And he's largely not seeing her. He's sort of like in his own world. So she's falling on that again and again and getting increasingly deflated. People who have an anxious attachment style are often more relational than people who have an avoidant attachment style. And they also, you also may need more reassurance. These are all forms of insecurity manifesting in different ways. And so the reassurance may be around being seen, being wanted, being needed. And you also may have simultaneously a bit of an allergy to hope or reassurance. So even if you get that reassurance from your partner, it's hard to trust it. It's hard to take in. And I think what's important to note about both of these attachment styles rooted in attachment theory, is that what we know from the research and science today is that they come largely from how our early years shape us, the kind of families that we grow up in, and how our families respond to emotions or don't respond. I'm sure that some innate wiring and temperament factors into it too. But if you have an anxious attachment style, or if you have an avoidant attachment style, these are things that you can work to shift. You can work to become more securely attached, as Stan Tatkin would say it. Stan Tatkin, whose name I keep throwing out, I should mention, is just a big biggie in my field. He wrote We Do and Wired for Love and Your Brain on Love. And he's a great resource to check out if you're running into your own attachment bumps. I think the last thing I'll just say is when you get somebody, if you are an anxious person in your attachment style and your partner is avoidant in their attachment style, what can happen is what John Gottman calls a meta-emotion mismatch. That being one person is pursuing, one person is needing, one person is clinging, one person is doing a lot of emotional labor, and it's kind of falling on deaf ears. At best, at worst, the person on the other end who's more prone to shutting down may be very sensitive to criticism, may be very sensitive to conflict, isn't able to really see or hear you if you're the anxious person, which sort of is a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It doesn't mean that the solution to this lies in the hands of the person who is anxious. I think actually the potential for change is most deeply rooted in the person who is avoidant, although it is a team effort. Learning how to tolerate being seen, learning how to tolerate coming out of your high tower, as Jack holds himself up in, learning how to deal with the distress that comes with greater intimacy and vulnerability are all really important things to work on, particularly if you struggle with an avoidant attachment style. Because this meta-emotion mismatch can actually be the perfect storm, and it's not uncommon, and a lot of couples deal with it. So anyways, those are some thoughts on attachment style, on some classic characters in our film culture that represent it. Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog also come to mind. Miss Piggy's totally anxious attached. Kermit the Frog's totally an island. So they're a total meta-emotion mismatch. And I could probably think of some human beings too, but I'm out of time. So if you like this video, feel free to subscribe on our YouTube channel. More to come. Thanks for listening, and happy Halloween.